robotic process automation kind of fits in there. What I wanted to do today is to maybe give you some definitions and talk about what Microsoft is doing in this area. Like Ron mentioned, our strong partner UiPath, they're going to present. They have a much solid, a very finely tuned robotic process automation platform. Whereas, as usual, Microsoft tends not to build a very a niche solution, but enable a lot of tools. As a matter of fact, UiPath leverages some of the work that we do, particularly on the cognitive services side of things, and the terms that you heard recently, like forms recognizer and things. So somebody muted me. Okay. So this is what we're going to cover. I just want to kind of define some terminology as to what's RPA, DPA, and why should you care? And then, Ron mentioned, yeah, people love to hear how do you use this. So kind of highlight some business application use cases, and what are the things that are coming. Ron mentioned about demo. This particular demo is a little bit tricky. That's why I didn't want to do it, particularly in a virtual environment with network issues and setup. So I have pre-recorded this. We may not see the whole thing, but I'll just at least show you some of the tools that we have in action and then answer your question. Okay. Okay, so what and why, right? So believe it or not, many of us just get up in the morning and go and do things that is repetitive, right? And it says 90% of the work is repetitive, people doing the same thing. Sometimes even people digitize things, but still it's a repetitive work that we do. So in general, when we, particularly early stages, when we talked about robotic process automation it was targeted at data entry, and it was also targeted at legacy systems, right? So when initially, as a modern technologist, when people introduced RPA, I was a little bit skeptical, and I said, why would you do this? There's microservices, there are APIs, and then why are you doing screen scraping technology? And as a matter of fact, when people talk about RPA, that's what comes to their mind: legacy systems, the DOS screen, or systems that are, you have to actually emulate how you do the application. Go click, open the application, fill the data, and try to emulate what a human being does, right? Now, one of the things that's surprising, as much as we want to be in the modern world, 80% of the systems do not have APIs, right? So, and a lot of times people don't want to re-architect the application because the net business value isn't there. Things are working, people are doing the work. Why would they spend a couple of $1 million because microservices is cool, because APIs are cool? So a lot of systems still remain at that legacy level, and hence you need to find another way to gain productivity in those areas. That's where the RPA became extremely popular. So instead of outsourcing it, or sending it to other countries, why not make that those things automated? I think a lot of the outsourcing countries should be really concerned about this. Think about medical transcription. Think about data entry work. All those things are kind of targeted with this kind of automation. So where I'm emulating probably somebody in India who opens up, copies the data, and then puts it in an Excel spreadsheet, or goes and opens up SAP legacy system and types it in. I'm trying to emulate all that using RPA. So there's been, that's how, at least in my opinion, the RPA started to address that particular niche. And since then, it has gone much beyond that. So the market is, like you said, about $3 billion. And another big interest is apparently in Gartner, in the last 16 quarters, RPA is the number one in the number 5 search terms that are used. So there's a lot of interest. People are looking for ways to automate things. So when we talk about robotic process automation, we think about those kinds of manual tasks. When we talk about digital process automation, And also in robotic process automation, it's usually a single system, right? So here I want to enter this old VB application. I want to go and add this and close that application. When we talk about digital process automation, here's where we are talking about modern systems, Salesforce, Dynamics, SAP, where there is an API, and typically a company has more than all these systems, and maybe a purchase order is created, an order is created in SAP, and then it needs to be updated with the delivery in Salesforce. Instead of people manually doing it, what we do is we take advantage of these APIs and connectors. Like, for example, with Microsoft, there is something called Logic Apps, which has got about 300 connectors, right? Out of the box connectors just to connect with SAP, OneDrive, Dropbox. You just simply connect it, move things around, and stitch together a set of processes. Like, for example, hey, I received a purchase order. Now I go extract the data from the purchase order, put it in SAP. Now, when SAP does, now I send a notification to using Outlook, send a notification to the picker or warehouse, and who in turn has a link now clicks on it. So we can kind of sequence a bunch of things, and these modern systems do not require simulating the actual data entry, but in turn, they use the backend and API to automate those processes. So it heavily relies on APIs, microservices, connectors, out-of-the-box connectors, and this is where a lot of the drag and drop tools like UiPath and others could take advantage. Okay, connect to this. And Microsoft has, as a part of the Power Automate, it's got a Flow. And Flow is a drag and drop orchestrator. Behind the scene, it uses the logic apps to connect to the system. So that's what we do when we say digital process automation, connecting APIs and moving across the system, SAP, Salesforce, and any other system that has an API, and going end-to-end processing, and again, reducing manual intervention. Right? One of the things about all these things is it's not only about saving labor, but it's about accuracy. It's about audit trail. When a system does something, you know that, if I'm at the lunchtime, my attention span may be not very good on a Friday evening, but machines don't do that, right? So there's more reliability, consistency, and also I can track who did what, because I can audit, okay, this purchase order was entered at this time because the system is doing it. So there are a lot of benefits around it. Now, when we talk about digital process automation, there's another interesting aspect to that, which is what we call intelligent process automation. So, don't think of these as three different terms, but a combination of things to enable business process, right? So what do we mean by intelligent process automation? That is when we use things like forms recognizer. And Bala talked about object detection, right? How can I incorporate like a trained object model that Bala talked about and make it process up as part of my robotic process automation? So intelligent process automation, what it means is that as part of my automation, I'm going to use AI and cognitive services. And I'll just walk you through a scenario. So you can combine all of this with the ultimate objective of automating processes end to end. So instead of just explaining, the best thing is to show you how all of this can come together. Okay, let's say an email is sent to you, your supplier is sending an invoice, right? And then what we do is we use form recognizer, which we have trained. So as soon as the invoice comes, we have a connector in the flow that says with this subject line, with this, now wake up and iterate through the attachment, look at each of the invoices, and take that invoice and run it against a pre-trained model. What is that model? That model actually has identified where is the header, where is the invoice item, and where is the quantity, where is the price, right? So instead of me having to re-enter this, what I do, I go, as soon as the email comes, the system goes behind the scene, looks at the attachment, and takes all it into a JSON file. And then what happens? Now, I need a little workflow. So since I've already defined the model, I know where the amount is. So I look at that field and create a flow that says, hey, this amount is greater than $5,000. So I need an approval. So if I need an approval, what do? I can do something like this, where I connect to the teams and send an adaptive card that says approve, reject, or other things. So what happens as soon as the information is extracted, it sends to the teams, to the manager, with all the relevant information in a nice little approve, reject button. And when they say approve, and that data comes back. Now the process automation wakes up, oh, he has approved it. Now what do I have to do? Okay, my ERP is a legacy system. I don't have a digital process automation capability, and hence, when we say digital process automation, when it was connecting to email, it is digital process automation. Why? We have an Office 365 connector, so I can connect with that. But if I'm going to enter the data into my legacy ERP, I do not have an API. So what do? I take this value, everything that I have in the invoice, and then I simulate opening a legacy application. It may be a VB application, or it could be an IBM terminal application. So what I do, I take this data, and I've previously said this value goes in this field, this value goes in this field, and then what happens? This automatically pretends to be a human being, launches the application, takes the values in this from the invoice, and starts typing it in. And just like a human being closes, it saves that, and now the thing wakes up. And then what it does? Okay, that's been done, and it's got confirmation that the legacy has been updated, and then sends an email again using this email connector, notifies the thing. So here you've seen everything in action. The digital process automation is where we have the Teams connector, the Office email connector. The IPA is the information extraction using AI trained model. The RPA is when I'm using that screen scraping to do that entry into the legacy system. So that's what end-to-end and RPA that combines all the technologies are. The use cases are enormous, right? We do so many things. So it's not about just entering data using RPA. Like, for example, even an onboarding in human HR, how many people are lost in that process? If we could actually stitch together everything that needs to be done when HR, has the badge has been issued. If it is, if not, we can even do a hydrate process. 3 days it waits. If the status is not updated, sends an urgent email to the HR person. Or has he been provisioned with a laptop? We could monitor each one of these without the human being having to do anything, but constantly reminding and escalating to a human being through a SMS or something, right? When, let's say, it's been 30 days, this guy didn't get his computer. Now you can escalate it to the manager and send a note saying that, look, you need to take action. So anything that's forms the object detection, like, I'm just working with a customer. What they're doing is they have to have traceability of their product, right? It's a food company. I won't get into it because of the confidentiality. What they have to know is what are all the ingredients that went into a package, right? Because if there is a recall or if there's a quality problem, they have to know. What do they do now? They manually enter when the thing comes from the truck, and then they manually go and update all this. Now we are doing a Power Apps that uses OCR to do forms recognizer, to scan the invoice, extract the information, go and update the system, and then generate QR code and fix it. And then through each phase of the processes, it goes and collects that information, gives traceability from end to end. So that's another case where process tracking and having end-to-end visibility from the raw material to the final product consumption, you could leverage a lot of these technologies, right? If we even use, for example, in DevOps, right, what we do is that as soon as the code is checked in, we send a notification using Flow to Teams, to the managers. Look, the code has been checked. Should we release it? and then they can go into the DevOps and check everything and say, and then in the Teams itself, they can approve it, right? You could stitch together almost any processes to minimize manual intervention, and so everything is kind of can be optimized and improved. So when it comes to the platform, what does Microsoft have to offer? So this is where we have the Power Platform. So the Power Platform, and my demo will kind of show this, is that the Power Automate is where the process automation is, where you create a flow, you connect to you drag and drop, connect to Office, connect to Salesforce, connect to those 300 connectors I told you, and then connect to Teams. You stitch together a process, and that's one of the things that you can do. And then you can even have virtual agents, right? That where when this happens, like for example, let's say I updated the status of the order, that it's been there. Now a virtual agent can wake up and then make a call to my supplier. Instead of them having to constantly phone what happened, my virtual agent can wake up and send or make a call, send an SMS, or get into an IM window as an agent. Look, your order has been updated. Is there anything that you need? So there are many things that you can automate. And the Power Virtual Agent is becoming extremely powerful. If you have dynamics, you can do drag and drop and create a flow of conversation, stitching together a lot of these things. So when it comes to platform, it's the Power Automate, the Power Virtual Agents, the 300 plus connectors that we have, and some of the things that Bala talked about, the models that he builds, we can leverage that in the flow. So let's say the labeling project has a model. I can actually call that model in my flow and say, when the image comes, go call that model and detect this and classify it and put it in a blob storage and get the metadata and put it in my whatever system that I need to update, right? So you can combine all these things together to build a system. Now, this is what Microsoft, one of the things that we were reasonably good up, I should say very good, was the digital process automation because of the connectors. But where we were not very strong was this screen scraping thing. So Microsoft bought a company recently, I think Soft Motive, which is very specialized in screen scraping type of technology. And what, one of the things, remember, when you do the screen scraping, you are literally creating processes for each time an employee does. So if you have a computer, it's as if you're opening and closing an application. You can actually put a bunch of machines in a load balancer as if 15 people are logging in and opening and closing and distribute the workload. That's the difference between a personal automation and enterprise automation. In an enterprise automation scenario, you may have multiple computers working as if human beings, where we open, enter the data, close, and then keep repeating it for large-scale workload. Now, we talked about AI. How does AI fit into the process automation? I can use any of this as part of the process flow. Well, at this point, I just wanted to answer the question that was raised about text analytics. So I was thinking about another option for text, unlike images, what we call cognitive search. So we have the ability to read PDF, anything else, and extract the documents and create a search index. Like, I'll give you a use case scenario. For example, in a call center, I work with a lot of call centers. Sometimes data is in the SQL Server, sometimes it's an unstructured data and images and all that. What cognitive search will do is that if I go and search, let's say, customer A, it'll go and pull the structured data from SQL Server because it's got the index, and it'll go pull structured data from documents because it has extracted the text and classified it. You can actually define custom domains and all that so that when it goes through the document, it extracts the relevant information and puts it in the right place. So you could use the cognitive search capabilities, and it's actually a drag and drop. You go and say, here is my PDF document, go extract the data and create an index out of it. So there are many ways that you could, in addition to object, we can leverage text as well. Now, from a process automation, this is what we do. We use all this as part of the flow that we do. Now it's then what I'm going to do, like you said, I'm going to play a video. I may not play all of it, but let me see. All right, yeah, okay. So let me see if I can put this. Ron, can
Yeah.
you play this?
I think I need to be the presenter. Let me
Yeah.
see. Let me see if I can. I'm gonna change over here and let me see. Um,
So, as part of our discussion about robotic process automation, I just wanted to record these demonstrations so that the concepts of robotic process automation on Microsoft platform can be explained. Now, we're going to do a few demos. One demo, which is purely what I call digital process automation using connectors. And that is going to make use of Salesforce connector so that we can connect to Salesforce. And then based on something happening in Salesforce, we are going to uh, send a form that was developed using Microsoft Forms. Uh, and then we use our Office Outlook connector to send an email for that survey and then capture the response. So that's the first demo that we're going to do. And the next demo that we're going to do is a combination of few things. That is artificial intelligence. So we are going to use a forms builder to recognize the forms. And then we get a form invoice and then recognize it used on pre-built model and extract all the values. And once we extract the value, we leverage Teams for an approval. And once it's approved, then what we're going to do is we're going to take the values from the invoice and simulate a legacy system. In this particular case, it's Windows application, but anything that we can log into on a machine and start and then fill those values in that. So it'll kind of cover an end-to-end spectrum. So let's get started. We're going to start with the Salesforce demo. Now, before I show you this, let me show you a few things. So I have a Salesforce connection, uh, and what we are going to do is we are going to use the Salesforce case where um, we create a new case, and then what our robotic process automation, digital process automation will do based on its connectivity is going to wait for the status of a case to change to closed. And once that is closed, we are going to use a survey that we have built and send it to the contact person. So if you go back, let me show you the survey. So that's the Salesforce survey. And this is how it looks like. It's very simple because it's for the purposes of demonstration, but there are several things you can do here, right? Add your custom variables, things that you want to add, first name, last name, case number, whatever else you want to add, and then leverage those either as an input or an output in the entire flow. Now, so we're going to use these flows so that we can see what the responses is. Now, currently we have about 8 responses. I'm going to trigger certain action based on what happens in Salesforce. Now, before I do this, let me kind of walk you through what is happening here in this. I don't know, we create a new one. Uh, so when you look at it, and it says when a record is modified in Salesforce. So how do I connect to Salesforce? My connectivity is here. So I can add a new connection. But notice that what I have here is um, a I've connected to let me just set this up so that we could see this. Uh, so what I've done is I've used a connection here. It's called arcris20iat.edu. That's how I'm connecting to Salesforce, right? And then in the Salesforce, what happens is that I have certain conditions. I'm going to the object called cases, which is what we looked at, right? And then we are going to see in the advanced options when the status of the cases is closed, I'd like to do certain things and I want to check if the contact is available. And if it is, if not, go get the contact here, get the record, see if the email is available. And once it's done, I'm going to see send, get the email address from the contact and send the Salesforce survey. This is a survey that I built, and I can actually create a custom email template and use it where I'll have my customized messages. Oh, please fill out the survey, etc., etc. I'm just using for the purpose. I'm using the default template. So that's all it's going to happen. When a status changes on a case in Salesforce using the connection I showed you, and then get the contact ID, and then send based on the contact ID, send it to that email address, a survey that I've already built using a default template. And then once that survey is responded, I can go and look at the forms to see what happens, right? So that's the scenario that we're going to look at. So let's go and trigger this by creating a new case. Uh, and in this particular case, I'm going to leave the status first, and I'm going to use my own email so that I can show you what happens. And I'm going to use a dummy account that I've created. And this is going to be an electrical problem. And the reason is there's a problem with the equipment design. And the case origin is like, oh, somebody sent me an email. That's how I opened this case. Those are the critical information that we need. So I'm going to save this case. So what we have is a new case in Salesforce, right? And if I go here and then just refresh this, nothing happens because the status remains the same. So let's go to Salesforce and change the status to closed, and that should trigger a robotic a digital process automation. So, and it's all using connectors. There's no legacy system, anything involved. So I would say it's closed. Now let me come to my flow, and now I will refresh this to see that if that has triggered an action. Not yet, but soon we will see, because we just changed the, or did it? No. So let's go and make sure that we have saved that. All right. Okay, so we have status as closed, and we will 19 seconds ago. So it's been done. So what happened was a survey was sent. So let's go and see if that email has arrived. Indeed. So we just got this here. And what I can do now is go and fill that survey. And that survey is the one that I showed you. And we will fill this and give it 9 and 5, and then we will submit this survey. And once it's done, we could go to our forms and then see what happened. here. So I will come back here. And let's look at the responses. Now I have 9 responses. And then it even tells you several things like, so this is the last one. So I'm a promoter. Why is that? Because I gave a very high score, so I'm a promoter. And then what is the trend happening in May to June? How many responses we received, what's the response ratio, so many have been sent. All that information is available. So now what we have seen is a digital process automation using a flow that
Ron, we can
listens to
stop now.
Salesforce and
All right, Raj, that was a good demo. Hopefully people enjoyed it. We'll now have Raj make some concluding comments before we turn it over to our RPA experts from UiPath.
Yeah, all right. So I think there is an echo. So what you've seen, I didn't, there's another demo that uses form recognizer, but because of the time, I don't want to stretch this along, but I hope you saw what's possible. I think what you're going to see next, it'll be even more fascinating because they have a solid robotic process automation platform. What I showed you is a bunch of tools being stitched together. Again, this is an exciting area. Hope it triggered some thoughts in your mind in terms of what you can automate in your factory and processes.